This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Agronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 129. And tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hello.
Tam.
Hello. Sorry, have some cheesecake.
Thalen.
Hello.
Did you bring enough cheesecake for the entire class?
Maybe. I took a bite at the worst imaginable time.
Yeah,
I
well.
had more time.
So, last night was the opening of Diablo 3 Season 8.
Yay.
And we made it what's the opposite of furthest? The least?
The least far.
Nearest?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Words are hard. No, we didn't do terribly well last night, did we? We did not hold out very long.
No, it was definitely the lowest level I've ever been at the start of a season since, the very earlier seasons when I wasn't paying as much attention.
I think we made it to 54, if I'm remembering correctly.
At best, yeah.
Yeah, because I picked up and I popped in earlier and got into a group and finished it out and got to 70, but I haven't done really anything more. I think I finished off the rift I was on, and that took me to I think Paragon 8.
So I think I managed to get through chapter 3 of the journey. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it was 3, because I now have 4 pieces of my set.
Okay, cool. I literally hopped straight into a group, and I haven't even gotten my Kanai cube or any of that stuff.
I normally I end up leveling through a combination of different activities that ends up sort of netting me some of the things that I need for the journey. And this time we didn't really do that the first night when we were leveling, but then today when I went back by myself, I did some of the bounties and some of the other stuff that I needed so that I could finish up the chapters as quickly as possible. And I'm pretty underwhelmed. They didn't really change much of anything for this season, so it's pretty much exactly the same as last season, except that you get a different set out of Hadrig's gift.
Yeah, there's been 0 patches between the last 2 seasons, so there's no tweaking, no anything. The builds that were really good for Season 7 are still really good for Season 8. So, I don't know,
And I complain sometimes, they change things and it's different and I have to figure out what, build I want to use this time around. But in retrospect, without those changes, it's actually really boring. And if I had been smart, or if I had thought that I was going to want to play a lot, I would have leveled a different class.
Yeah.
And tried something different just so that I could be doing something different with my time. But because I suspected I wouldn't want to spend a ton of time with this season, I just went with the Demon Hunter because I knew it was silly easy. And I don't know, last season I quit, and then on the last day I came back and I got my stash tab. I don't foresee that happening this time. I think I'm gonna probably stop after I get the cosmetic rewards, which will be the least far that I will have progressed in a season in a very long time.
And I think part of the problem is it feels like there's not a lot going on with Diablo 3 right now. And I don't know, I'm torn. Before the recent season schedule, I thought, these seasons need to happen more often. But every 3 months is maybe a little too fast.
I feel like that would be appropriate if there were a new patch and they added something each time. But if we're not going to do that...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and most of the seasons, however long there's been between them, and it's been fairly variable, but most seasons there's been something different. Either they added, a new mini zone or some new different kinds of monsters, or they did some tweaks on the classes so they played a bit differently, or they updated the legendaries with different, legendary abilities. And now that there was just nothing between 7 and 8.
Well, and the problem is like it feels like, oh, I just equipped this class a few weeks ago. In reality, it's a couple months ago, but that's how it feels.
Well, and I was just playing it, right at the very end of the season, and so then it's even harder because there's nothing has changed, and now I'm going back through and I'm leveling from scratch, and it feels kind of crappy because everything is slow. I don't have all of my legendaries, like it's the fun part of the game in the sense that upgrades come very quickly and that's satisfying, but it's also very frustrating because you don't have all the pieces you need to make any build work yet. But I love the game, and I'm gonna play, and I'm gonna get my creepy looking wings, and I'll still be happy with that. I mean, at least it's an excuse that gets me back into the game at all, which otherwise I might not right now.
Yeah. Well, and Diablo 3 is in a really weird place right now, just because like there are so many rumors flying around about the potential announcement of Diablo 4 at BlizzCon this year, and then the schedule came out. I don't know if it was this week or last week, and there's nothing. Like there's like a single panel for Diablo, which is really disheartening.
Yeah.
Now there's some fluff panels that could be hiding something. So, okay, I feel like I have to unravel the tinfoil hat theories to make any sense of it. One of the things that they've done with BlizzCon in the last couple of years is you've been able to buy a goodie bag just like the ones that get, picked up if you physically go to BlizzCon. So, like, if you order the digital ticket, you can plunk down some additional money and get the goodie bag sheet. So you get all the little things that, that you would have gotten had you actually attended. This year, they sent out copies of these to streamers, basically as a way of showing off what's in the goodie bag and probably to drum up more sales. One of the items is a Diablo 3, like, polyhedral dice set. And it's a fairly nice looking dice set. It honestly looks like dice that I already own. It's the black with red writing set, except for this time it's in a Diablo-y font.
Right. All right.
Okay, so
here you probably have like
like I have so many of these things laying around the house. But it's a nice looking set. Like it's the traditional D&D set. So all the different dice, 2 of the D10s, and like 3 D6s. I think it's that mix. So basically what you need to play D&D. Okay. Where this gets a little weird is the D4 that is included with this set is a non-standard D4. Traditionally, when you roll a D4, the number that is facing the table is what you rolled. Something got shifted in the creation of this dice. So 2 of the sides match, one of them is different. And on one of the sides' number combinations is 114, which is 11/4, or it could be interpreted as November 4th, aka the first day of BlizzCon. So you have a dice that says 114 that's a D4.
Is this because they screwed up the printing?
It's probably because they screwed up the printing. Because, realistically, all they had to do was transpose one set of panels, and it would have ended up with this dice.
Wrong. So I'm guessing if there's a way you can put it that says 114, there's another way you can put it that probably says 411.
Yeah.
And then a 223 and a 332. So
yeah. Yeah, there will always be 2 of the same number and 1 different.
Yeah.
Okay. So as a slight aside, as somebody who has overseen this kind of promotional thing, first off, I'm kind of with you in that this is sort of a tinfoil hat theory. Second off, they must have gone with some cut rate die manufacturer who can't get the numbers on their dice right.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
That's terrible.
Well, obviously, they're probably going for the lowest possible production run for these things because like they're creating a bunch of them.
Yeah.
So that's tinfoil hat theory number 1.
I mean, I feel like I have to interject here that, like, as far as tinfoil goes, I would say if the other sides of those dice actually match up and are correct, then the tinfoil is maybe onto something. But if the other sides are also screwed up in the corresponding way where it was actually transposed, then the tinfoil's maybe gonna have some holes in it.
Right. And they're all screwed up. Like, there is no situation where it functions correctly. It is always 2 match, 1 is different.
Yeah,
on this dice.
Then that's a printing error.
Right. That screams printing error. So the other tinfoil hat theory is in the same week, David Brevik and Bill Roper of, Blizzard North were at Blizzard at the same time. And David,
they have wanted to talk to Bill Roper ever again.
The news there for me is that Bill Roper was at Blizzard.
Yeah. So at the same time, like, David Brevik starts tweeting all of these things about, that he's been, in the action RPG thing for decades, and he's really looking forward to ushering in a new era. And around the same time, he's, tweeting pictures of the orc statue at Blizzard. So people are like, oh my God, are they bringing back the D2 group? Like, what does this mean?
So, basically, cough.
Okay, then, like, roughly a week later, Brevik makes another announcement that he is now a consultant for Path of Exile. And all of his tweets were related to that, not, D3, D4 news. So basically, like, all of this stuff is boiled down to nothing. And, like, what's so frustrating about this thing is, like, Diablo fans are super loyal.
Yeah.
Like, they're willing to play a game. I mean, it's been this way for years. Like, Diablo 1 fans were super loyal. And we're happy to live on the fumes of the weird Sierra expansions. And then Diablo 2 comes out, and people are playing that for a decade.
Yeah.
And then finally Diablo 3 comes out, and now they're continuing to play it loyally. And the biggest takeaway from BlizzCon last year is Diablo felt like the game they forgot. They did not even mention it in the opening address.
Yeah, I mean, I was incredibly disappointed in the Diablo coverage last year. I mean, I get that Blizzard has new games that they're trying to sell, and that right now Diablo is not in a space where it is bringing in a lot of money for them. But
I feel like that's
one of their, like, foundational games. It's been around forever. It has a huge loyal following, and I mean, I don't know, the least you could do is remember to put it in your opening credits, right?
Yeah. I feel like it not bringing in money is their own damn fault. Like, there are ways that they could monetize that game and offer additional bonus content.
They tried.
Yeah. I mean, the auction house is totally their fault. They screwed that up royally, and to their credit, they fixed it in a way that really fixed the game, but it screwed them over in terms of monetization.
I think what they should do with Diablo, because it's proven to be the way they've been successful with Diablo, is get the people in the studio and be like, hey, who really loves Diablo? You guys work on it with no oversight. Go.
Yeah.
Like, do what you guys want. Go crazy.
And that's kind of what happens right now.
I mean, when they put out a patch, some of the patches that they put out have been fairly meaty, and, the stuff has been good. But, I mean, I enjoy the patches. I like them, and I would happily take more of them. But I just, as a player, I would like to feel like Blizzard cares about this game at all.
Yeah.
Like, I would buy another act. I would buy additional classes. I would buy little bite-sized add-on content like that. And I think most people that play the game would. They would plunk down, additional money to get more stuff.
another chapter, another class, another mini zone. I mean, there are a lot of things I'd be
Another
willing.
chapter is not cheap.
No,
Neither
I
is another
know.
class.
I mean, if they dropped a class that one of my biggest problems with it was that none of the classes really fit my player fantasy, and if they managed to get me one that did, I'd be really into it.
But another chapter and another class was an expansion, right? So
yes.
I would be willing
Along
to
with,
purchase either one of those things for $20.
Along with adventure mode and an entire rebalancing of the game to make it significantly more fun.
Right, but they the thing is they don't need to go that far. Reaper, or what was it, Reaper of Souls?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We don't need that for another expansion. They needed to do that to fix the game, but the game is fixed.
I feel like this runs into some of the complaints that Rise of Iron is running into if they don't do that again.
So I guess for an expansion that did all this stuff, you want us to pay for an expansion that doesn't.
So here's the thing with that is the people that are complaining are not the serious Destiny players. All of the serious Destiny players that are in my clan are eating it up, and they would happily plunk down another $30 for an expansion like this. And I feel like that's the same audience that any smaller expansion would really be targeting in Diablo.
Yeah, I mean, you got to watch out for the no true Scotsman thing there, but I also feel like that kind of content maps really, really well to your devoted long-term player base, whereas an expansion tends to map well towards, come back in, take a look around, leave again.
I mean, I guess that's true, but the folks that I meant in the Destiny are the folks that have been playing nonstop. They didn't take a break.
Yeah,
and they seem to love this expansion.
But with Diablo, I mean, they are certainly trying to cater to their, current fans who are either sticking around or are at least coming in for the seasonal stuff. And I mean, I think as much as we just complained about there wasn't anything new this season, we still, keep coming back for the seasons.
And the thing is I still had fun last night. That was a blast. Even though we were both tired as hell, it was a blast.
Yeah.
Although I think
kind of
probably
I feel like I've had every time one of these has dropped, it's been inconvenient, and I kind of wish I had jumped in at the right time to really get in and enjoy it. Because I'm curious what this season experience is like, because it's not something I've tried.
It is absolutely not too late, because within an hour or two, we can get you up to the maximum level. That's still a thing. The Paragon point grind, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, but there's a difference between jumping in with everybody else at the start and
totally
having to play catch up.
Yeah, I mean, because basically the frustrating thing with Diablo is if you are playing catch up, you are not functional. You just kind of have to stay back and try not to get hit.
Well, and that was my experience when I did try to jump in one of the seasons. We played for 20 minutes or so, and it just was, I don't do anything here.
Yeah, I mean, and it can definitely be miserable if you're behind when that happens. For me, I just kind of accept that's part of the deal, but
well, and I mean, it's an ideal situation for, say, log in, camp yourself at the front of a rift and, watch some TV or something while your friends level you. And then once you're done, then you can go back and play, which is annoying and is not really ideal. But outside of the seasons, sort of the assumption is that everyone is, Paragon something ridiculous and has been playing forever, and all of that stuff stacks and carries over. So it's sort of a minimal headache to catch up.
Well, the weird thing with Diablo is I am basically slowly leveling my Paragon through seasons. Because every time a season ends, you merge in your last Paragon points. So I think I'm up to I don't know, Paragon 600-ish or so, which is not a lot considering most diehard Diablo folks seem to think it the real game begins around 1200 Paragon or something like that.
At what is it, 800? You've maxed out all of your non-repeatable Paragon points.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think I'm starting to push up into that territory now after playing all these seasons. But I mean, I end up not playing non-seasonal almost at all now that the seasons are so close back to back. I don't feel a lot of motivation to play outside of them very much. And
Like, my
that's,
characters
I'm
end
fine
up
with that.
my characters end up feeling more like a trophy than anything, because they just sit there relatively unused in the state at which I left the season in.
But anyway, I mean, I still love this game, and I am really hoping that whether or not they have a new expansion or something else major in the works, like a Diablo 4, I want some sign from Blizzard this BlizzCon that they actually give a shit about this game, because they definitely didn't do that last year. I mean, the Diablo panel last year was great, and they had a bunch of new stuff to talk about, and it was really interesting. But like the overall, sort of selling points of, Blizzard's great new stuff just totally ignored Diablo completely. So I really hope that they have something to make it up to us this time.
So another piece of seasonal content happening right now is the co-op mode in Overwatch. And I know, Tam, you've played it and I've played it. Has anyone else played it at all?
I have
Nope.
not.
I do not own Overwatch.
Me
Likewise.
either.
It's a really, really interesting mode.
So is this like players fighting against AI enemies?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like a...
It's kind of tower defense-y almost.
Yeah, kinda.
Because the first thing I thought of when you said, call, was I thought of like Team Fortress 2. They've got that man versus machine mode now that I've never tried.
I hadn't actually tried it either. I know it exists, but
Yeah, it's doing this thing where yeah, you're like, I don't even really know how to describe it. Building this, they built this city, and you're defending it from characters in Halloween costumes.
So you have the Omnic Crisis, which is basically the robots like Zenyatta. And this time around they're doing Zomnics, which are basically like scrap heap versions of Omnics that are, invading your city. And you're trying to defend and keep them from taking down your gate. And every so often, enemy players in the form of bots are going to show up, and they're like a specific team. So you have Reaper as the Headless Horseman. What's I can't think of is it Junkrat?
Yeah.
Junkrat is like a mad scientist. Mercy is a witch, and she's the leader of the team. Roadhog is like a Frankenstein's monster type character. And is there another one?
Reaper's Headless Horseman, Junkrat's the thing, Roadhog's... No, that's just the four of them.
Yeah, so basically, like, every so often they spawn in, and there is a chance of getting more than one at once, which makes it horrible. And they come in, and you have to take them down, while at the same time trying to keep these Zomnics from just piling up on your gate and taking it down. And there's really no way to heal your gate, I believe, once it's taken damage. So you're basically just trying to hold out as long as you can. And I do not know how long a match is, as far as like how long you have to hold out, but it takes a while. But ultimately, like, I enjoy it a lot more than actual PvP in Overwatch.
Yeah, it's really fun. Like, I had a ton of fun messing with it. It makes me really, really want what's the word I'm looking for? It makes me really, really want more PvE in that game.
Well, and in general, I have this feeling about a lot of games like this. Like, I wish League of Legends, for example, had really fun PvE modes other than fight versus bots. And that's the same kind of thing that's happening with Overwatch. Is like, sure, you can play bot. Okay, you're just playing a watered down version of the normal mode of the game. I would love to see these MOBA style games bring in like a purely PvE path. And it doesn't even have to be like story mode PvE. Like, this is a game mode. This is a game mode with bots. That's cool. Like, it's fun. It just needs to be something other than a attempt at recreating what the normal version of the game feels like. So this does a really great job of being PvE Overwatch. Like, even if that's all it was defending different cities against, attackers.
Yeah. Like, here's a bunch of different maps wherein what you're doing is creating, or wherein what you're doing is fighting different attackers. Because, yeah, like, I feel like Battlefield, the new Battlefield apparently has a great campaign mode.
That's out of the ordinary for Battlefield.
Right, because their campaign modes are usually just maps with bots.
Yeah. Well,
Battlefield, I guess I can't speak for 4. Battlefield 3, I know, had a campaign, and it just wasn't a whole lot there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that's really telling that, I feel like it's really telling that they have this, like, we recognize that PvE is important, and that having decent PvE gameplay is important for even our PvE mode, or PvP game. And, like, Overwatch is this purely PvP game that I really, really want to be able to play with my friends co-op in a meaningful way, in like a not one-off kind of way.
Well, and the thing with Overwatch is, like, I really like its setting. I like its characters. I like its world building. It just doesn't give me much opportunity to really experience that.
Yeah. Like, I want an Overwatch mode wherein I'm playing, like, Marvel heroes, basically.
I would buy that.
That would be awesome.
Like
that sounds like fun. I mean, I already know I like the look and feel of the game and the characters. I just don't like team-based PvP shooters.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is like, it doesn't even have to be really super carefully crafted content. Like, it could be procedurally generated content, and I would be happy with that.
Yeah, I mean,
just give me, like, mini objectives and let me run around and play these characters that I like.
Yeah, I mean, like, if they had even a decently solid bots mode with an interesting thing going on, which they sort of have, but it's not very robust, and the bot AI is pretty terrible. It's, like, predictably terrible. But yeah, I feel like we've had this promise of PvP is the infinite content faucet, and that's only true for certain types of players.
Well, and I think a lot of this also ties into the desire of every game to become the next esports juggernaut.
I don't think any game has become an esports juggernaut by trying to become an esports juggernaut. It's just happened. And the two biggest ones in the world are the best examples of this. Like, neither StarCraft nor League of Legends started with, hey, let's become an esports juggernaut. They kind of got there later.
I feel like that's almost something that's on their design sheets now. Like, we would really like to capitalize on the ability to have viewers watch us.
Sure.
Well, and this, I mean, frankly, to touch back on Diablo again, it's one of the things I'm slightly nervous about in terms of a potential Diablo 4. Right? Like, I don't care about esports and PvP, and I'm somewhat nervous because of all of the attention that Blizzard has been paying to esports things recently.
So much so that they even made their own. Like, they buy out MLG.
I know they bought out one of the
made
StarCraft
some sort of,
yeah. I don't remember what exactly the details of that were.
I mean, it's more than on their radar. It is a priority for them, and, like, that's fine. It's probably a good business decision, but I don't really care about it, and I don't want it. I don't care if it's in the game as long as it's not overshadowing the things that make the game enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some stuff that is sometimes that comes out of designing for like competitive viewership play that's really, really great. Like, you sometimes get really, really great messaging. Like, oh, instead of all of these totally unhelpful buff icons, like, you get an actual effect in the game that says this is what you need, like, that indicates that an effect is happening. And like
the blue or red ring.
Yeah.
In League.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole thing where we have the whole, like, icon that's like run to this person, the, like, shared damage arrows thing, that's taken straight from various esports games that wanted to let their audiences be able to see what needed to happen versus anything else. And it's super great. Like, but when it overshadows the actual play, like you said, like the bit you're coming to play the game for, then you lose a lot.
And I don't know, like, it feels like right now we're in another phase of everything is a hammer, where, like, it doesn't matter what your game is, like, it needs to support these things.
Yeah.
And one of which is esports profitability. And some games just aren't that interesting to watch.
It's true.
And that's okay. Like, I mean, like, I wouldn't want to watch somebody play, you know, Divinity 2.
Yeah, well...
Or not Divinity 2, but, like, Original Sin. Like, I wouldn't really want to watch... Yeah, like, I really wouldn't want to watch somebody play that game. Like, it's fun to play. And, like, the big problem that I have with esports in general is, like, all it really does is make me want to go play that game. Like, not watch somebody play that game, just go play that game. So I feel like some of this is coming from the fact that I'm just not an esports person. Like,
yeah,
and also, it's a horrible name.
I really love watching. Certain things are really, really fun to watch, where I get to see really, really good players playing a game at a level that I'll just never see. But yeah, I agree. Like, not every game is going to be good to watch, and that's okay. Like, some of my favorite... I've had people, like, suggest that I stream, like, Thief. I'm like, you don't want to watch me play Thief. You really don't want to watch me play Thief. It's really boring for anybody to watch.
You play Thief like you play most other stealth games?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mostly that involves waiting.
Yeah. It's long periods of waiting followed by short periods of activity, and, like, that's not exciting to watch. I mean, maybe it's exciting for somebody, but maybe I'll just do it sometimes so you can like see exactly how boring it is. But
that's a lot of the reason why I don't stream much at all anymore, is because truthfully, most of the stuff that I do in games is fairly boring. Like, unless I'm actively tanking a raid or a dungeon or something like that, then it is not that interesting. Like, there's no reason why anyone should ever watch me do these things.
I don't know why people listen to us now, so
yeah,
I just don't know.
True.
But anyway, the real takeaway is that I wish more games would put in permanent PVE gameplay modes like that with Overwatch, because it definitely made it significantly more interesting.
Yeah. And there are a bunch of games that I think I would have liked more if I could have played them with my friends in some capacity that wasn't against a bunch of other people.
Other than, like, League, what are you thinking here?
Star Wars Battlefront, Tribes, honestly. Like, I know you didn't care for Tribes, but I bet we would have had a lot of fun with Tribes if there had been, like, a campaign mode involving...
Probably, because the gameplay of Tribes is pretty fun.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the gameplay was really fun, and, like, I think the gameplay in Battlefront is pretty fun.
Yeah, Battlefront is great, and the previous ones where you could play single player were a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I have not purchased the current Battlefront and have no real intention to, because I don't want to be forced to play multiplayer.
Exactly, and that's the only that's all you can do in that game.
Yeah. And honestly, like, things that are not fun with strangers are kind of fun with your friends. Like, the biggest problem that I have with Battlefront, and I own Battlefront and I've played a decent amount of it, and the big problem is the whole hero aspect, where you assume, like, a hero and it's just thrown at you. It's not like something you choose. The game decides you're going to spawn in as Han Solo, or you're going to spawn in as Princess Leia. And it's frustrating when you're playing with strangers to see this happen. But with friends, it would be like, oh, let's gang up on the person who just got, Han Solo. And
yeah, like, that person in a PvE environment, that's a boss.
Right, that's a boss.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my secret favorite multiplayer games is Splinter Cell, which had an incredibly fun co-op mode where you were like a pair of super spies. I mean, it also happens.
I want to say Conviction had a nice co-op mode.
Yeah,
recently.
I think Conviction was the one that I played that I really enjoyed. It had a really cool co-op mode. But even something like Left 4 Dead is fun to play with a bunch of people. Like, I would I would love to play a Left 4 Dead game that isn't about fighting zombies, for example.
I mean, Vermintide exists.
I'm pretty sure that
haven't played it.
We do have that.
We do have that, and I totally want to try it at some point.
We never actually
it's
played
not
it.
about fighting zombies.
It's not. It's about fighting rats.
Yes.
Are they zombie rats?
No, it's Skaven.
They're chaos rats.
Okay, that's pretty close to zombie rats. You have to.
It's
they're
Mordheim
Skaven,
that's not
they're awesome.
Mordheim.
Yeah.
Because it's not actually set in the Mordheim setting, is it?
No, it's set in the last days of the Warhammer Fantasy setting that they blew up.
Yeah, but I mean, it's basically like what Mordheim would be, where you're fighting. You're a band of adventurers fighting an onslaught of constant rats.
Yeah. Basically, the world is ending. The Skaven are invading the city, and you and your friends are trying to hold out against them as long as possible. I have played a couple of levels solo, and they were pretty fun.
And I think they just released some kind of a content update.
Possibly. I haven't really followed them.
Yeah, it's in the
I think
city
they're
of
developing some
Overstrike.
sort of 40k version of that game, if I remember correctly.
I would be very surprised if they weren't.
I would be fine with a Space Hulk that plays that way.
I guess
Or
there's a
Space
DLC that
Crusade.
came out in May.
Yeah,
Drachenfels.
I think that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Although speaking of co-op modes, I'm actually admittedly curious about the Watch Dogs 2 co-op.
How would that co-op even work?
I have no idea. That's kind of why I want to see it. I mean, like, I liked the premise of Watch Dogs 1. I was just A, unplayable on my computer, and B, had a wholly unlikable main character. And apparently they're changing both of those in the sequel, which gets my attention. Similarly, Titanfall 2, another basically PvP-only game that's adding PvE. That's adding a whole, I think, campaign and co-op campaign.
Yeah. And this time around, they're also adding a bunch of the trappings of unlockable skins and stuff to keep people playing longer.
Yeah.
I mean, Titanfall was a perfectly fun game. It's just I didn't really care about like that. Okay, so that is a game where I should want to spend all of my time trying to get a mech, but it felt like it was a much easier game if I just ran around killing people that were not in mechs and then somehow blowing up the mechs. Like, it felt like a game where I didn't really want to be in a mech, because a mech threw a giant, crosshairs on my back.
Yeah.
But this time around, it is no longer a Xbox exclusive, so it's on, PS4 and PC and Xbox.
Yeah, I mean, if I have the opportunity, I might pick it up on PC and see if anybody's playing it.
So I think next up is a sequence of games that are coming out soon. Ash, I know you have been playing monster collecting games, namely World of Final Fantasy and Pokemon Sun and Moon, the demos of them.
Demos of both of those games came out this week. And the Pokemon demo is basically what you'd expect. There's very little surprising in it, except for the fact that HM seemed to be entirely gone. Like,
really?
Yes, really.
How has it been replaced with something?
Yeah, when you start, you see you are on pretty much this path, and you have to fight some Pokemon as part of a trial. See some rocks, and you walk up to them, you get a message like, a Pokemon will be able to break this rock. Like, sure, okay, whatever. Then after you do that, if you go back into the demo, they give you I don't even remember what they call it, like a ride caller or something, that lets you ride a Tauros around. While you're riding a Tauros, it can charge and break rocks.
Oh.
Apparently they have similar things for all the other things that used to be HMs.
Huh.
I am fine with this because it always felt like I was having to take an otherwise useful Pokemon and give it an ability that really wasn't that useful just for utility purposes.
Be able to get around the map.
Yeah.
Yep. Funny part about this is they took Surf, Fly, and Waterfall, I want to say. Yeah, that was the other one that's actually still useful, and turned them into TMs, which data miners went and dug through. So the abilities that were useful and on HMs are still available.
If you want them.
Yes, if you want them.
That's really interesting. One of my biggest things is for a lot of the recent, I mean, even the recent ones, I felt like fully a third of my available Pokemon moveset was being taken up by HMs that I could do without but really want to, because
There
I
was
missing something.
there's one game so far. The first Black and White requires you to use Cut like right after the first gym, and then never requires you to use an HM until you beat the game. After that,
Yeah, but you still got them.
you still got them.
And if you don't know the game already, you feel like you need them. Like, if you know you don't need it until after you've beaten the game, that's fine. But, like, every so often you run into this thing that's like, oh, well, I can't get past this thing in this dungeon, like 3 floors into this dungeon without an HM. Whoops. Or like, hey, I need to cross this lake in a dungeon. Should have brought surf. And so
I've definitely had a few of those in games since then because I've been holding off on learning the HMs.
Yeah.
Because it always felt like the HM ruined whatever Pokemon you used it on.
Or even if it didn't ruin them, it just sort of made them... It was like, I had the one... I remember why I was never excited about water Pokemon, because they always turned out to be the same thing.
The water Pokemon are like the only thing I didn't mind because Surf was pretty great.
Sure, but I've used Surf in how many Pokemon games now? It's the same ability. Like, I don't get to do anything interesting with my water Pokemon because I'm always going for Surf. And it's like, sure, Surf is good, but...
Surf is good, Flamethrower is good. I don't have a problem with Surf because Surf is basically water's Flamethrower.
Yeah.
It's that ability, or Thunderbolt if you prefer. Basically what you're going for anyway, so...
Yeah, and I feel like what I've been able to do is play with electric type... Like, for example, like I go for Thunderbolt a lot, but I can go for interesting stuff that's not Thunderbolt. I feel like I have that option, whereas with Surf, I didn't feel like I had that option.
For the most part, with Electric, you don't really have that option either, except for physical attackers. Which there's not that many of.
Sure. I mean, there's weird stuff. There's weird stuff like the electric fairy types.
Even Didan wants Thunderbolt.
Yeah, and maybe that's just a limitation of the thing where there's really only one for a lot of types. There's just like the one good move.
It's the simple one. 100% accuracy, either 90 or 95 damage, depending on which game you're playing.
Yeah.
Is the baseline most effective unless you can find some way to make Thunder work or find some reason not to use it otherwise.
Yeah.
If you're in double battles, you might want to go Discharge instead because Thunderbolt only hits one target.
But long story short, I like the idea of being able to have more varied Pokemon than I have before and not feeling like I need to put HMs on things.
I'm okay with Cut dying in a fire, yeah. Strength.
I mean, I get why they did HMs, but like I always felt that they should just give us items to do whatever the thing was. So that it was more Metroidvania in that aspect, where you have now an item that, can smash rocks or, whatever, to let you move on.
I didn't like about Black and White is that because they didn't use HMs to gate progress, they basically had just people standing in your way until you do whatever plot thing they want you to do.
Cut, Fly, Surf, Strength, Waterfall, Rock Smash, Dive. I like 2 of those.
That's the list as of what? The most recent game set?
Yeah. Some of them have significantly more. Some of them have more than that.
I want to say the Gold and Silver remakes had like 8.
Yeah.
9.
I'm seeing it. Yeah, it goes up to 8. There's as few as 6 and as many as 8. Oh no, there's few as 5 and as many as 8.
Original games had 5, and Flash was one of them.
Yeah.
Flash got moved to a TM a while ago.
And stopped being super important.
Wasn't really that important in the first place.
But yeah, it's one of those things. HMs always bug me from the having to make a decision without complete knowledge part, where it's like, this is a thing that is extremely difficult to remove from my Pokemon if I teach it. I can't just replace it.
That was what bothered me the most about HMs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I find that annoying. It's slightly, and it's like, sure, I can reuse them, but it's like they block off a slot in my Pokemon roster, and I don't know how useful it's going to be. But if it exists in the game, I know I'm going to have to use it at least once. And so, because I don't replay Pokemon games, like, I never boot up the same one and play it again, I never know. I mean, I guess I could, read a guide or something, but that sort of ruins the entire game. And I would hate to continue using my team. Yeah, they always frustrated me. I'm glad they're gone.
That's honestly a problem I've always had with Pokemon in general, is every time it asks me if I want to learn an ability and forget another ability, it is a super stressful thing because I don't really know what the hell these other abilities do. So I don't know if I'm just now ruining my Pokemon forever or if this one's going to be better than the last thing I had.
I feel like that's less of an issue now that they tell you what the ability does before you learn it. I will admit that in the first several set, they didn't do that.
Yeah.
So I feel like you still have to have enough knowledge with the franchise to understand what it is telling you.
They give you a much better amount of information, although you still have to say, you still have to opt into the first stage of forget.
Yes, till you at least say, maybe I want to consider this thing, it doesn't even tell you anything.
Yeah. I'm hoping they have more, I'm hoping there's a bit more strategy in the new ones, because I found a lot of success
What do you mean by that?
I found a lot of success by loading up Pokemon with exclusively the most powerful attacks I can put on them, and then use as many like PowerPoint up boosters as possible, and just nuking everything to death.
I'm relatively certain that the main story is never ever going to get more complicated than that.
That's fair. But I never felt like I found anything that, like, maybe I didn't play enough.
The post-game battle tower tends to require you to actually think about what you're putting on your Pokemon.
Yeah, I don't know. I want a middle ground. Like, maybe the main story should make me think about what moves I have on my Pokemon.
Man, I feel like my answer has always been, is this thing a nice big attack? If it is not a nice big attack, then no, I don't want it. Like, all I want is exclusively really large attacks.
Yeah.
Because debuffing, I mean, like, I've never felt like I needed to debuff that just drug out the combat.
Yeah, exactly. I never felt like there's like these defensive moves. I'm like, why would I ever use those? I just kill everything in 1 or 2 hits.
Yeah, the main game is never going to give you that. I'm pretty sure. Like,
But I felt like the
closest
battle
is...
tower jumps straight into, all right, these guys are going to really be difficult now.
It doesn't, though. Like, the battle tower takes a few wins before you start getting into, okay, this is starting to get a little rough.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I mean is that the game at no point teaches you how to do those things.
It doesn't. The game is bad at this.
Yeah. Like, I feel like the battle tower would feel
generally
like
evolving state of the meta, like, between players. I don't know if the game will ever get good at this. I don't know if it can.
Maybe. I mean, that's why I think it would be... I mean, I realize that the main game will probably never do this, but I think that would be a nice add for the main game, is to introduce, like, here's why you would want to do something other than just nuke something straight up to death. Maybe you still choose to nuke stuff straight up to death, but here's some of the advantages of not doing that. Here's why you would want to do that.
Or
there
maybe,
are two
like...
games I can think of that did anything like that. Like, if you, way back on the Game Boy Advance, Ruby and Sapphire were really simple. When they made Emerald, they redid all the gym leader teams, and some of them are somewhat complicated.
Yeah.
I'm sad they didn't use those teams for their remakes, too.
I mean, maybe if it was something as simple as, like, you gain more experience if you do the slower option to fight, where you actually use debuffs and things like that.
Yeah, or even just a difficulty setting. Like, here's you can play on normal or expert. Like, normal mode, you can go through the entire story and blow stuff up, and then expert would be like the Emerald style. As you go, you're going to need to learn how to use these things that aren't just the biggest nukes you can find.
Black and White 2 had an expert, but you had to actually beat the game first, making it entirely pointless.
Yeah.
Again, they also had a post-game that was not just the battle tower that threw you into things that were more complicated than, hey, my highest level Pokemon is 62.
Yeah. I did enjoy my Wonder Run, though. I found that way less stressful. Like, I actually find those games really, really pretty enjoyable when I'm not trying to catch them all.
Oh, yeah, see, that's my only motivation in Pokemon.
I get a little obsessive, and it doesn't always message super well whether I have caught them all in a particular place.
So, like, I have only ever beat Blue, and mostly because I get to this point or at least I got to this point in X and Y, and I got to this point in Ruby Sapphire, whatever the other one is, where I reach a point where I'm no longer seeing a lot of new Pokemon, or I'm not seeing as many new Pokemon, and it kind of stops being as enjoyable for me.
It actually feels a little weird that you hit that in X and Y, because those had new Pokemon through most of the game. They had a different issue where you take 5 years to get from the first gym to the second gym.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where the spot was, but it was like a field with like nothing but rock Pokemon. And they were all Pokemon that I'd already seen.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
It's been like an eternity there between the first and second gym.
Yeah. And I'm like, nope, I'm bored now. Let's go do something else. Okay, so of the demos you played this week, the one I am really interested in is World of Final Fantasy. How did it play?
World of Final Fantasy is sort of like Final Fantasy Pokemon. Like, that's what it is.
Except for you're collecting characters from Final Fantasy games?
You're collecting Final Fantasy monsters. It basically has two things going for it. One of them is the really obvious one, is nostalgia. And two is that it's definitely a systems game more than anything else.
Oh.
Your characters form a stack. So the characters can switch between large and small, basically. You fight as a stack of 3 things. with something large on the bottom, something medium in the middle, and something small on the top.
Like, are you legitimately stacked on top of each other?
You are literally stacked on top of each other.
That's hilarious.
Okay.
So if your characters are in their big form, they're in the large slot. They basically have something on their head and something standing on its head.
Wow.
What?
And in your small form, you're in the medium slot. So you're riding around on something with, again, something on your head.
This is incredibly weirder than I realized.
Yeah, this is not what I would have expected.
But based on how you're stacked and who's there, you have different abilities. Like riding around on the behemoth, you have a stomp ability where it like goes to make a stomp and then you land on it again for an additional stomp. Other sort of combo attacks, like I think some sort of cross slash, which looked like it was straight out of Chrono Trigger. And based on how you're stacked and what abilities you can give both your creatures and the main characters, you have different abilities available to you. It's really weird, kind of.
This sounds like it could get very complicated.
Yeah, it sounds very strange.
Like I said, it strikes me as a systems game. Like, I could spend a long time messing with this. I'm perfectly okay with that. The demo itself has you running around seeing basically how you capture creatures, which is not that different from Pokemon. The primary difference is that you don't always get things by getting them to low health. Sometimes doing other things will give you an opportunity to capture. Like Lulus, for example, only become available to capture when you heal them in some way.
Okay, I really like that. That's neat. I want that in Pokemon.
Unfortunately, you don't know the conditions until you use Libra on something. Also, your enemies will sometimes be stacked and can't be captured in a stack, so you have to find some way to knock them over, and then it's way more complicated than I expected.
So you got a big thing with a little thing on its head and a little thing on its head, and you got to knock them all over to capture them.
I had a Mandragora, like that you see in FF14, riding around on Fenrir.
Well,
Seems legit.
Weird. So I had watched a bunch of that game, and that game was weird. This game, your description of this is even weirder than I realized. I'm amazed.
It is definitely a weird game.
But like, this is good. I mean, it's making me want to play even more than I already did.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds interesting.
I wasn't all that interested, but I would at least pick up the demo and see what's even going on here.
The demo was actually structured like the Bravely Default one in that it's a completely non-representative piece of gameplay.
I don't mind that. I like that.
I kind of like that too, because it doesn't spoil any of the actual game.
Yeah.
And you said there was a bonus for actually playing the demo?
Apparently you get like some sort of policeman Magitech armor. I don't even know. Some sort of Magitech armor.
I'm okay with this. I mean, I ultimately pre-ordered because I knew at some point I would want to play, and you got a bunch of random crap for pre-ordering.
You get Sephiroth, basically.
Well, you not only got Sephiroth was for pre-buying or whatever, but like pre-ordering was something else too, I think. I don't know. Like there were several different tiers of things you got. And mostly I picked it up on the PS4 because I thought, well, I could either play it upstairs on the PS4 or this is probably going to be completely remote playable. Like
Exactly.
this is not a super actiony type game.
No, you can play it on
Vita.
if you'd like. You can turn on active time battle, but that's not the default.
No.
Like the other Final Fantasy games, because people like that, I guess.
I've never played a Final Fantasy game on active time battle unless it forced me to.
Like FF5.
Yeah.
Sam says that's his least favorite thing about FF5.
I'm not a fan of fights that go on without me.
If it's turn-based, if I'm selecting stuff from a menu, yeah, I want my turn-based to be turn-based.
That's the problem I have, is like it feels like, oh my god, I cannot think at all because shit's happening without me, so I better just pick a choice quickly.
I feel like I'm okay with some amount of time pressure, but
I'm okay. I'm not 100% okay with time pressure, but like not when I'm sorting through menus. Like, I don't know.
You shouldn't have to organize your inventory specifically so that you can get to the things you need as fast as possible.
Yeah.
one thing actually that I like about FF5 that this game didn't do is in FF5, if you are in a menu, time does not continue to progress.
Yes, thank goodness.
I wish that FF5
This game did not do this.
I wish that FF5 would stop time the moment one of my characters became ready.
That is what the default wait mode on this game does.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like, okay, now a character is like it progresses normally, but then a character is ready. Now I can select what I need to through my multiple nested menus and then continue. Also, you were right. This is definitely like police Magitech armor. It's even got a little helmet.
I mean, it looks adorable, which is honestly what made me kind of want to play it, because it's like the most adorable version of all the characters I love from Final Fantasy.
Everyone is a Lalafell.
Look, I play a Lalafell for a reason. Just saying. They're adorable. I have a Chibi Belghast avatar that I use for everything, also for a reason. And I guess it unlocks in like 2.5 days, according to PlayStation 4.
Is it really? I thought it was out a week after that.
I don't know. Like, it's like I was looking for the demo just now, and on the purchase page it says game unlocks in 2.5 days.
Oh.
Huh.
That may be when it starts the pre-download. But so another thing that has happened that we haven't really talked about is in the last 2 weeks we have gone from only being able to kill the very first boss in Emerald Nightmare to being at 6 of 7 Emerald Nightmare, and it has been a fun little ride in World of Warcraft.
It has.
It really has, and it's been a bit of a relief, honestly. Like, what were we doing wrong for a couple weeks there? We were really stuck.
Well, I think a lot of it literally was gear. Like,
I agree.
it was gearing, and there were a handful of us that had really hit the gearing hard and shot up in levels, but the vast majority of our raid, like, we're super casual, so everyone was pretty super casual about getting gear. So if they were in 430s, that was probably the norm.
830.
830, yeah. I don't know why I cannot handle the concept of 800 being a real gear number. Like, I am constantly saying 4 instead of 8. I guess I'm doing my own stat squish in my head.
But yeah, I mean, I know when I joined the raid, I apparently was not the lowest DPS that night.
Well, no, and you even got a late start, like a significantly late start.
Like a month.
Yeah,
but
I'm still amused by the whole, like, eye level is now just common parlance thing. Like,
it's part of the default UI.
I remember playing WoW and contributing to the research that determined why some max level items had different stats than other max level items, and the equations that worked that out, including a modifier that we decided to call item level.
I remember April Fools during Lich King when the April Fools joke was the E-Pain.
Yes. It was a bar that grew above your head to show how big your bigness score.
Yeah, and the higher it was, the fewer people of lower score than you would see, until eventually, if you were the most awesome person, you would have the world all to yourself, because phasing.
Yeah. But no, like, it's just a thing. And it's weird how that concept has permeated other game experiences. Like, Light and Destiny is absolutely gear score. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's just different expressions of item level.
I mean, and like Final Fantasy XIV, the reboot has it built into everything. Like, that's your cap. Like
the default UI.
Yep. Like, that's how they gate their content, is by item level.
And it's super confusing for anyone who hasn't been playing MMOs forever, because they're like, okay, is this item level 30 or level 42? Oh, it says that it's item level 42, requires level 30. Well, which is it?
Yeah.
It is a little difficult.
But I feel like there's a lot of concepts like that that have just grown up out of MMOs that aren't exactly clear at first glance.
I have I can go on about that one for a while. I don't think we need that. I don't think anybody needs that, least of all me.
But honestly, like, this has been a fun raid. I have never really cared much about druids, so from that aspect, like, it is not exactly like the most nostalgic raid for me. I mean, I know druids have been, certain druids have been dreaming of the days that they get to, go to the Emerald Dream. Well,
it's been a hanging plot for thread since vanilla.
Yeah.
Are you not one of the people that's been wanting to beat up Malfurion since forever?
Also,
since he got back.
No, I would love to beat up Malfurion.
My problem with it is that we still can't beat up Malfurion.
That's true. We have to say.
Yeah. I'd rather just let them eat.
You get to beat up scenarios.
But
I didn't
actually,
want to beat him up as much.
Yeah,
I like scenarios just fine.
Scenarios. I really wanted to beat
like
up
an okay
Malfurion. I didn't get the chance to. Like, every time he's getting carried away by someone and whining and crying, I I wish
we
I
just
could just
not
leave
save him?
Right, like, can we just let them take him? Is it really that bad? Like, Toronto will get over it. Like, she'll be fine.
I mean, we're bringing Illidan back here at some point in the near future, so it'll
Maybe
be all
you
good.
just, or you could just give Tyrande to them too. Like,
Simplify
hey,
things.
you guys want a priestess? Like, we got another one.
I don't dislike her as much.
I like Tyrande, okay.
The only thing I dislike about Tyrande is the fact that, she's attached at the hip to Malfurion.
Yeah, that's pretty much my beef with her. What is wrong with you?
But, I mean...
That's not a, like, Illidan versus Malfurion thing. It's just a Malfurion thing.
Just
Like,
Malfurion
both of
thing.
those
It
are
has
pretty
some
bad
standards.
choices.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily the biggest Illidan fan either, because he's a horrible person.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a horrible person. Like, no. Don't romanticize.
But they've been totally showing us how he's always done everything for the greater good.
No,
It's been
no.
pretty awful.
No, he's done some really awful things.
Like he murdered all of his Moonguard to save the world. Doesn't that make him better?
No. That makes him a murderer. Like, that whole quest chain is super disturbing, and how nonchalant he just murders them. Look, guys, I need some power. I'm just gonna drain you. It'll be fine.
Yeah, he spends 15 seconds, moaning about, oh God, I can't. Should I do this? No, but I must. I'll have to do it. Okay, I'll do it. And then he's just like, okay, kill some more. Okay.
Nom nom.
It's like,
More
man, this
power.
is delicious. Why didn't I do this years ago?
It makes me think of like when you've got a bunch of gummy bears and you're like playing out little like scenes. Does nobody play out little scenes with their gummy bears? Maybe I should stop before I.
So you like have plays with your gummy bears before you eat them?
Oh no!
That was animal crackers with me.
Okay, yeah, we're on the same page.
Like similar idea, I guess. Yeah.
It's not just me.
Now that said, I did really enjoy spoilers getting to experience the 25-man Black Temple raid from the other side.
Oh yeah, that was
hilarious.
awesome.
And I don't think it was until phase 3 that I noticed Johnny Awesome there in the back.
Yes.
In the back that had gone AFK. It was like,
Yes.
Oh, no, sorry, Johnny.
That was amazing.
You gotta die.
The only frustrating part about it is, like, no matter how badly I beat them, and I did, like, they were wrecked. Like, they were self-rezzing.
Well, that damn shaman kept, re-rezzing.
Yeah.
Wave shows up, and we all know how that goes. So.
Yeah, because she's OP. She cheats. But honestly, I'm, like, really looking forward to finishing this raid, because then it'll let us finish Balance of Power.
It'll still be a while before that happens.
Yeah, but that's a major component of it. And
Once again, cosmetic looks are the real end game.
Real end game.
It is. But the other thing I'm super looking forward to is the release of the Karazhan 5-man heroic raid.
That's on Tuesday.
Yep. And I do not know how long it will take for us to get it unlocked, but
Me neither.
Like,
it's going to be a lot longer than anybody expected.
Like, someone on the Warcraft devs basically said that what people had assumed from data mining is not actually what gates it. So it's not that you have to run some, class hall mission to get attuned. There's some other attunement process.
I'm hoping that means that class hall mission is like the other
rewards
raid.
from Karazhan?
Yeah, the other raid and mythic dungeon missions that just gives
Seems
you
likely.
an extra piece of loot.
I think we're kicking around the notion of maybe trying to do it on Sundays.
That was the plan.
But like I doubt, like, in any possible way that we'll be able to be attuned and ready to go that first Sunday.
Well, it depends how complicated it is and how
Depends on what they
driven
do
we
with it.
are.
But it's really interesting that this is, like, Karazhan almost fills the same niche that not exactly, but gearing-wise, it kind of fills the same slot that World of Darkness would in Final Fantasy XIV, where it's not quite, like, it's raid catch-up loot, essentially. And I'm really curious to see how hard it actually is going to be.
I mean,
Because
if it's on par with the other mythics, then it will be probably a bit difficult for us at first and then farmable.
Right. Once we learn the fights.
But I'm looking forward to the process of learning it.
The thing is, Kara was kind of huge. Like, even just traveling through it, if you were, not doing it at whatever the current max level is and need to actually kill all the trash.
It took us a long time to get all the way through Karazhan the first time. And supposedly Nightwing is a thing that's been data mined, but nobody has a clue. Or Nightbane, yeah.
Nightwing's a little different.
Yeah, Nightwing's a little different. But I think they said that, like, the data mined Nightbane drops like 670. God, why do I keep doing that? 870. My brain cannot wrap around the notion of 800 eye level, but I'm definitely looking to it. I know, Ash, you've also been playing Guild Wars 1 this week.
I've been playing Guild Wars 1 this week.
Why? What on earth prompted you to play Guild Wars 1?
The true end game.
Cosmetics.
In the system they introduced right before Guild Wars 2 came out is the ability to do things in Guild Wars 1 to get some cosmetic stuff in Guild Wars 2. And, well, one of the relatively early rewards that I earned some things, but then Guild Wars 1 has some problems, which I'll get to probably in a bit, and decided that I played enough, earned enough to unlock the armor sets and one weapon, and that was kind of where I left it. And this time I decided I am only a few points shy of picking up the sword appearance, which I really want. But I don't really want to play my Mesmer anymore, because I didn't really like Mesmer in Guild Wars 1 all that much. So I went to the Dervish, which I had, I think, around level 10-ish before. I've been running around. That's actually been pretty fun. But some things stand out. The first and most obvious of these is that server-side movement is still not fun.
And the total lack of jump.
And yeah, going along with that is the fact that jump is not a thing. In fact, the Z-axis is not really a thing. You can attack things, like, if you have a melee attack, you can hit things that are, like, on a cliff above you if they're close enough in X and Y terms.
Yeah, like, you can be standing on on the third floor of a building and punch somebody on the first.
And that's perfectly reasonable.
That's kind of hilarious.
So yeah, that's definitely a thing. But also the skill system in this game, I think I referred to it as the skill system other games like to try to copy, but it's just done better here than it is in any game copying it. For those unfamiliar, Guild Wars gives you a bar with 8 abilities, and you fill these in with abilities from your class, abilities from a subclass that you can choose, and their effectiveness is based on your attributes, which you can raise and lower pretty much at will. You have a finite number of points to spend on them.
And I think by like level 10, don't you have most of those points?
You actually don't have most of those points until you hit max level. You get something like 5 per level for the first few levels, 30 total from quests, and more than 5 for a few of the later levels. At the end, you end up with 200 of them. But because you can, spend and unspend them whenever you want, it's not that hard to switch between builds. And a large part of the game is picking up abilities and finding ones which work well together. This is somewhat complicated because there are a lot of abilities. But I'm running around as a Dervish, which is a melee character with a scythe, and I like it a lot more than the Mesmer, which is a spellcaster class, which involves tricky things, interrupts, sort of traps for your enemy, like damage if they don't do something, and also interrupts and damage if they do something.
Yeah,
it's weird.
It's
by far the most complicated class in the game.
I really enjoy the Mesmer conceptually in both Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2. But neither one, they're not easy classes to play.
They actually made it working. Well, it works in both games, I guess.
It does work. I mean, playing a Mesmer is like playing a blue deck, but it's way more delicate than a blue deck.
Like, maybe make sure you don't interrupt Flare instead of Meteor Storm.
Yeah.
See, to me, it always kind of felt like a in the lineage of the Enchanter from EQ.
Yes, very much so. Also, the most complicated class in that game.
Which largely involved not taking damage through trickery.
Yeah.
I will say the AI plays Mesmer way better than I do, so running around with like a Mesmer henchman has been pretty great. Enemies can't do anything, and I can just cover them in pieces.
Yeah, I also really enjoy the progression in that game being more abilities. Like, for a really long time, I've said that Guild Wars 1 has the best ability system in an MMO, and I think that might still be true.
I'm pretty sure it's still true. This game is old. Playing it is clunky. That statement is still true.
Yeah, because like as you play, you unlock more and more abilities. You can only ever have 8 of them on your bar at a time. One of which can be an ult, basically. Is that accurate?
Fairly accurate. Elite abilities tend to define your build.
Yeah, and all of these abilities do it's sort of like, you know how in Rift, when you first started going down a tree, you get a lot of abilities that were very similar
Yeah.
and or actually identical. In this, you get a lot of abilities in sort of the same vein, but they're not, you don't have to use them, and they're usually like, there are very few abilities that are just, this ability does damage. It's like, this ability does damage and sets this condition, or does this other slight thing for the most basic ones. And then they get more and more complicated and work off of each other and so on. And so like for example, I've been playing an assassin lately, running around a bit, and it's got combos in the style of Final Fantasy XIV, where I've got like a first hit of a combo, a second hit of a combo, and a final hit of a combo. But it doesn't actually matter which, as long as I have a starter, a middle attack, and a finisher, it doesn't matter what abilities I'm using. And so I can kind of custom build my combos to accomplish various things I want to do.
There's actually an interesting example of an elite ability that is an ability for assassins that counts as a mid attack that follows a final attack.
Yeah. So like what that
Instead
does,
of going 1, 2, 3, you can go 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 6, etc.
Yeah. I can start skipping I can start skipping a point in the combo and getting to the juicy part. I can also decide that I don't want to complete, I don't care about completing the combo and just have the first 2 hits, because those first 2 hits are giving me something valuable. And it's this sort of interesting, like, for example, one of the combos I can have is a really, really big hit that is most effective if my target has a lot of, like, close to their maximum health, 90% or higher. And then I only have the one middle attack at the moment. And then a final attack that also does a whole bunch of damage. But that's going to burn through all of my energy. And it's nice if what I'm trying to do is, plink at something with a bow, and then if it gets close, swap to daggers and explode it really fast. And just deal a ton of burst damage. And then go back to plinking with a bow. But it's not sustainable. Like, it's not good for any kind of sustained damage. I want a different combo for that. And so I have a different combo that's like, I'm just fighting with daggers all the time. I'm going to use this combo because it uses less energy. It deals less damage, but it uses less energy and gives me more ability to play around with it, more flexibility. And there's this whole, like, every class has what, like 100 or more abilities?
Something like that.
There's tons and tons of abilities for every class. And
some of which can only be gotten in some weird ways.
Yeah. And
basically, you can only get elites by defeating a boss with that elite and using a signature capture on it.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know about that. That sounds like madness. But yeah, it's got this really interesting structure where you're building a deck of abilities based on the much larger suite of abilities that you have access, but you're trying to like put together a particular build that's doing something specific. And they make it really easy for you to do that. You can swap it around in any city for free. It's really easy to do. But I like that approach of, I might go and do this raid or this dungeon so I can get this particular ability that lets me use this particular build. There's usually 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 different builds for any given class that all work and can do different things. But there's
even within those builds, there's usually, most builds are functional on something like 5 or 6 abilities.
Yeah.
At least most good builds are functional on like 5 or 6 abilities. So you can do various things with what you have left over.
Yeah, a lot of the build meta in the game is how few abilities can we use to be effective to allow as many slots for other things like utility, like, oh shit buttons, like whatever it is. And so there's this like elegance in compactness as well, which pairs nicely with the ability that Guild Wars does, and I have seen almost nobody else do in their signets.
Referring to Guild Wars 1 signets or Guild Wars 2 signets?
I don't actually know about Guild Wars 1 signets. I was thinking
Guild Wars 1 signets have no energy cost and generally increased recharge times. So you can get somewhat impactful abilities without impacting your energy management.
Yeah, I like the Guild Wars 2 version a bit better. And because they sort of serve the same purpose in terms of how they fit into what you're doing, sorta. Like in Guild Wars, they're sort of flipped. Like in Guild Wars 1, like you said, they allow you to get a impactful ability in without messing up your energy. And the cost is you can't use it as often as you can use other abilities. And in Guild Wars 2, it's the opposite. You've got this passive effect and then you can activate it to get some particular active effect, and then while it's on cooldown, you don't have the passive. And so it's this thing that you kind of slot in that's going to give you a passive buff, and then in emergencies, you can use it to accomplish some effect, but you'll be a little weaker afterward. And I really like that. I really like that kind of ability design. It makes me feel like having this button on my bar is valuable, even if I don't get into terrible situations.
Well, I mostly like the signets because they're always useful. Like,
yeah,
it always makes me a little better because I have it slotted. So I don't know, like it kind of allows me to do combat without having to worry about a bunch of things.
Mm-hmm. But I really like that they also, Guild Wars has this, both Guild Wars games have this kind of like relatively flat numeric progression, and your progression is more skill based and more like collect the pieces of your build based, and build and get better at building yourself for more different situations.
Kind of funny you should say that, because I feel like one of the mistakes that Guild Wars 2 made originally was that it did not have the ability system of Guild Wars 1, so that wasn't entirely compelling.
Yeah, and I think that's something that they fixed to some extent.
Well, I think the piece that it missed out on was nothing. I mean, and this may just like literally be a warrior problem, but very few things I have feel noticeably better when I get them. Whereas with Guild Wars 1 abilities, like there were a lot of abilities that like, wow, once I completed this quest and I got this ability, it feels significantly better. Like combat is just better.
Yeah.
And that doesn't like for me at least as a warrior, that doesn't exist in Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, you don't get a button. An individual button doesn't feel as impactful.
Right.
And that's why I think that still Guild Wars 1 has one of the best, if not the best, ability system in an MMO. Because like you're like, okay, I've got a perfectly functional build. It works for what I do, but oh wow, this ability does this thing, and I have these two other abilities that I didn't really have the right tool to use, but this one fits in perfectly, and I could make a build with these abilities that does sort of what I'm doing now, but with more utility. Like, oh, that's really, really cool. There's like this deck building aspect. It's kind of like the open a booster pack in Magic and get a rare card that makes you want to build a deck around it.
Right.
And it does the thing that I really like, where mastery of a class involves being able to play a bunch of different builds. Like you can really make certain classes sing and do radically different things by swapping out your deck. And I always found that really, really interesting. I mean, it was a big reason that I latched on to WoW as hard as I did when it came out, and for quite a while, is because that I got that same feeling. Like each one of these classes can do radically different things depending on how I build them, and I can be a master at all of them.
And that's something that has slowly left the class design in WoW to where like each class is a thing. Like, well, each class's spec is a thing.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot of nuance between two people playing, like Marksman Hunter, for example, are going to be functionally the same. Same rotation, same abilities.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a middle ground. I think WoW had really good reasons for reducing that system.
Well, the problem that they ran into was there was always the illusion of choice. Like, there was always going to be one build that was essentially superior.
Yeah,
like
there's always a correct rotation.
Once you left vanilla, like vanilla still had some optional things, like especially I'm thinking warrior tanking. Like a lot of us had vastly different flavors of a warrior tank build.
I think some of this was lack of general knowledge.
Yeah,
because the knowledge of the player base definitely went up after that point.
Potentially, but like I can definitely remember there were arms tank builds that were really good. There were there were Fury tank builds that were really good. The only thing that wasn't terribly good was just straight up prot build because they lacked threat generation, which was like at that point was always the challenge of any tank was holding threat.
Yeah, I mean I remember rogues. I always remember the difference between rogues and mages. Like mages would talk about how they are a fire mage, a frost mage, and like rogues didn't always ascribe many rogue builds didn't ascribe to even the highest tier talent in any given tree for a long time. There were these like little there were many builds that didn't even had like 20 points in each tree.
Yeah, the hybrid builds.
These really, really delicate hybrid builds.
Well, most of the warrior builds were the same way, to where you had a little bit in every tree, but it was what you emphasized that made the difference.
Yeah, but I always found that really interesting, and that was a thing that I really enjoyed in WoW, and I really enjoy in really both of the Guild Wars games. Like I can on a single class do a lot of radically different things for relatively low cost. And it's something that I miss in a lot of other games, where it doesn't feel quite as elegant, or it feels more like there are clear-cut right answers.
Well, and like a game that does this, I don't know if I want to say well, because it has problems.
I wanted to like this about Rift.
Right, I was going to say, this is definitely a thing that happens in Rift. The problem is it's almost too obtuse, to understand the way you build, because you can have like two different Paragon builds, since I'm most familiar with Warrior, and they're vastly different builds, and they favor different things, but neither one of them is necessarily obvious. You kind of have to rely on the wisdom of the crowd to figure out what you should be building and what abilities you should be using.
Yeah. And it was the thing that I was really excited about when I first started seeing Rift, was this massive ability to customize your stuff. But
now the one thing that they've done really well that I'll give them kudos on is they've gone to the best build makers in the community, and every so often they refresh like the stock builds, and the stock builds are actually based on a build that someone in the community made, and it will like be labeled with the player that designed this build with an explanation of how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
And like just in the bit of time that I've been back, I've seen those builds change periodically. Like when tweaks go into a specific class, they'll break out some new community meta build as just one of the suggested builds. Like, here, if you want to play a cleric shaman, try this build.
Yeah, and I feel like the thing that bugged me about Rift was that a lot of the really effective game builds weren't, like you said, weren't obvious. But like even inundated with abilities in Guild Wars 1, I can say, okay, I see what these abilities are for and what they're doing, and I can put them together in a way that's intuitive and functional.
But here's a really important thing. That is a very tiny fraction of the abilities available. Like the first skill trainer only has maybe a fifth of them.
Oh yeah, no, sure. But I've looked at the full suite of abilities for given classes with like Guild Wars 1 character builders.
Yeah, but
well, and one of the things that you were talking about with Guild Wars that drove me crazy with Rift is that as you're trying to put one of these builds together, you end up with all these duplicate abilities that are not just somewhat similar, but absolutely identical. Yeah, it felt like such a waste.
Because every class you could start with, so therefore every class needed like a basic attack.
And that, like, I know we've talked about this in the past, that's the key difference between like Rift and Arcage, was that like in Arcage there were only certain classes that you could really start with. Like they had builders, they had consumers, and then there were classes that kind of got mixed in because, you're expected that this is going to ride on something else.
Yeah.
Whereas, like in Rift, every soul, you can go 61 points into a soul, which is like all your points save 10, and that is absolutely a perfectly viable way to play that class. Like, they're expecting you to get everything you need from that one class, or soul, or whatever.
Yeah.
Guild Wars does not design any single line of magic that way, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I honestly think that's better. if you're gonna have multiple ones, like there's no reason to design it so that one of them will do everything you need, because that's just confusing. And like, for example, I can look at an ability that says this ability deals damage and causes bleeding, and this ability deals damage and gives you back some energy if you have an enchantment on you, which are both like assassin basics. And this ability costs twice as much, but deals a whole bunch more damage if the target is at 90% health or higher. And those are three abilities that all sort of fit the same slot, as it were, in a build. And I can just look at those and imagine where those are useful. I don't have to like guess.
I think like the key problem that I had with, say, Rift's build design was that not even necessarily duplication, but of exactly the same ability, but like giving you three super similar abilities that they expect you all to use all of. And where I've seen this happen a lot
my problem
is, so like there were reactives where basically like if you have blocked, you can use this ability. If you have dodged, you can use this ability. If, the target, blocks you, you can use this ability.
The target is doing a little dance.
Right. So they're all these reactive abilities, and they're all on different cooldowns, but the real answer is
macro them all into one button.
Exactly. There's never a situation where you didn't want to macro them all together. Yeah. Because if one of these was up, you wanted to hit it. But it's frustrating.
I feel like what Rift was missing that Guild Wars has is a limited hotbar.
That too.
Like a lot of that button bloat stuff, you can keep both the fun of getting lots of new abilities and halting the hotbar bloat problem with having that, like, you can only choose 8 of these, or however many you choose, but like 8's a pretty decent number. You can only choose 8 of them. Choose wisely.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that I thought I was not going to enjoy about WildStar, and in fact, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Because then I could pick the things I needed to have a useful build, and I didn't have to worry about fiddling with a bunch of little things that might make things slightly better situationally, or in every once in a while. Like I could change it on the fly anytime. So if there was something really situational I needed, I could slide that right in, but I didn't have to be worrying about it at every single combat.
Yeah, it wasn't like you were flooded with situational abilities that you had to know how to use all of them and be able to elegantly so that you could respond to every single situation.
I feel like for Cleric, the response was even worse than that, because I had like an ability that does a bunch of damage on a 5-second cooldown, and I have an ability that does a little bit of damage over time on an 8-second cooldown, and an ability that does slightly less damage on no cooldown. And basically, my rotation was hit whichever one of these is up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember in the early days of Rift, at the point at which I discovered that, I can essentially macro almost all of my buttons onto one thing, because whichever one is ready is probably the right button, whether it's situational or just like a dot or something that's off of a cooldown, and that's not super fun.
Yeah.
So I feel like the game that's come the close to the Guild Wars 1 design is the Secret World.
Yeah.
And that they give you a lot of abilities, and they interact in interesting ways with other abilities, so you kind of have to figure out, what are you going to do with this build? Like, are you going to set condition damage? Are you going to...
definitely the closest.
Yeah.
Like most of my builds based around penetration. Like, I wanted to hit abilities that did penetration damage and then did something based on that condition.
Yeah. And I think that Secret World, that where the Secret World fell on its face was it's allowing you to select both actives and passives.
Yeah.
Like, that was too much.
I actually don't feel that way. I feel like it was more, it's telling you which abilities to want together rather than really anything else. These abilities are all focus abilities.
Oh, I see what you mean. So, like, it wasn't actually that there were a whole bunch of choices. It's that there appeared to be a whole bunch of choices, but most of them were wrong. Yeah, I can believe that.
Well, they built in all this complexity, but what really happened was there was the illusion of choice. And had they actually made multiple right choices, like to where all of these paths are equal, like this is just different ways to build your character.
They don't even have to be equal, just close enough. And that game did not do that.
It really did not.
Well, and honestly, like, it worked just fine until you got to the end of the game.
Yes. Okay, it worked mostly fine.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like I had zero problems playing the way I wanted to play while I was doing World. And then once we started doing, what were they, experts or?
I don't know if you remember,
but
I
was running around with us.
Okay, so
yeah, because I was in a different guild.
My experience was we entered Transylvania and I was dead weight.
Oh man,
I had to find a new build for Transylvania.
I completely wrecked face in Transylvania. Like
You were lucky that I definitely had to find a new build for Transylvania.
I could solo like those big vampires. I could take on 2 or 3 at a time.
Yeah, I remember Brian basically didn't change his build at all.
I started using a tank build with melee weapons.
Yeah, Ash, you were pretty close to having a functional build, if I remember correctly.
I continued to use the build I used prior to that in dungeons when I wasn't actually, taking damage. Yeah. But I could not do it in Transylvania. It was too squishy.
Yeah.
I was the super weird build of Shotgun Blade, and it worked great for Transylvania, but then it didn't work at all for Nightmares, really.
Yeah.
Because melee is the wrong choice.
Melee was the wrong answer. Another build I eventually came up with was, at some point we looked and discovered that the sword's channeled finisher was actually way out of line, and so I had a build based on buffing that worked really well.
Yeah. I was blood, enough said.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was a heavily invested blood healer because I was going to play a healer in that game. I think we've shared this story before, but we got into Nightmares. It wasn't
even Nightmares, it was getting ready for Nightmares.
Oh, that's right. We were gearing up. We were working our way up to Nightmares. I was struggling to heal through anything, and Kodra had like, because he hadn't needed to change his build in a while, had banked just a bunch of AP. And I was like, and I was getting super stressed out, and he was like, try damaging for a while, try a different build, and I'll see if I can heal. And he was a better healer than I was with like.
Because wasn't he Fists?
Yeah, he just went into Fists.
Yeah,
that was the right answer.
It was the right answer, and he was a better healer than I was, literally instantly, and it was the worst feeling.
Yeah, I avoided that only because I started putting points into blood, and then I realized that I didn't have anyone that I was playing with at the time, and I decided maybe I should go for some sort of damage thing instead of healing, and that's probably what saved me from being completely useless.
I don't like claws, just conceptually. I mean, I know that some people really like Wolverine, but I don't like claws as a weapon.
Well, and Wolverine being a healer is just weird. Yeah.
And that was weird too. But I went from blood. I was a blood elemental and moved into blood assault rifle because assault rifle had a healing tree for some reason. I thought, okay, that might be cool. No. Long story short,
rifle had its own issues.
Yes.
This really was the right answer for healing in that game, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It was also the right answer for damage. Fist Chaos was the most damage you could possibly do. This was basically the build I stumbled into.
Yeah.
Until it decided that melee was not okay.
Which was Nightmares.
Right.
So at which point I had to basically pivot my blade shotgun build that I loved into a blade pistol build because that would function and I could at least have ranged all the time.
I was heavily invested in fists and in chaos, which was melee magic, and in swords. So I basically rage quit.
Well, our inability to do anything together ultimately led to just none of us playing.
Yeah. Because you were running with us by the time we were doing Nightmares, if I remember.
Yeah, it was. I just didn't level with you guys. Honestly, mostly I soloed.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun running through basically that entire game with a group of 4 people.
Oh, it was incredibly fun. That game was amazingly fun up until that point. I mean, I even had fun running through Transylvania, even though I was feeling like my build was garbage. Like it was fun because I felt like I was participating in what we were doing, like intellectually, even if I wasn't actually like capable of participating in combat in any meaningful way.
But yeah, that's like the only game that I've ever played that was close to the deck building system, because it felt like a deck building system as well.
Yeah.
Man, and I think Rift would feel better if, one, it was limited to a single hotbar, and two, there was more combo magic going on between abilities.
Yeah.
One area that WildStar also suffers in a little bit, and really Rift does too, is well, actually, I don't know what the current state of Rift is, but WildStar had the AMP system, I believe.
Yeah.
Basically a talent tree. Limited somewhat what your options were, at least what your good options were going to be.
Yeah. I love the idea. I don't know. I conceptually love the idea of like roaming around an MMO world, and like when I think of games without when I go on like my MMOs don't need levels tear, what I imagine is going around the world and collecting more abilities, like your card decks, and so you get this progression wherein you're constantly getting these new abilities and being able to do more and more interesting stuff with them, which keeps that like progression feel without just making all your numbers bigger. And like you could come up with a build that lets you make really big numbers if you wanted, and like that's part of the game, but not like the only avenue to progression, I guess. I discovered that WoW's like stat bloat has made me not feel like any of my gear is a meaningful upgrade. And I find that kind of interesting because like every time I hit something, I get like 5 or 6 or 7 digit numbers. I think it's usually 5 or 6 digit numbers. And like, I just can't even process. I couldn't even really tell you which of my abilities do the most damage because I'm doing so many of them at any given time.
I feel like I only don't have that problem when I'm playing balance, because dropping a moon on someone can do over 1 million damage.
Yeah.
Which is honestly kind of fun to see.
But like, it makes it really hard for me to when I get a gear upgrade, I don't see my numbers go up noticeably. And like we were playing Final Fantasy recently, and we geared up. Like I got like maybe 10 more eye levels, and it wasn't a weapon upgrade, but it was 10 eye levels worth of gear, and I noticed a difference. I could tell a numeric difference in my heal.
I only really notice that when it is a weapon upgrade in Final Fantasy.
I notice it when I get a big jump in eye levels, like when I upgrade 3 or 4 pieces of gear at once, which is what I did recently.
Probably because I play a monk.
Yeah, I can see that.
And like, I don't really pay attention to my numbers that much.
Oh, I think it's really fascinating because I will look at logs after a raid or like after killing a boss in a dungeon or something, but I never pay attention to what my actual numbers are while I'm hitting something. Like, I mean, they show up on my screen. I haven't turned them off, but I've just completely tuned them out. Like, healing, I feel a little bit more because I see that health bar moving and what fraction of it is moving versus what spell I'm casting. But it's just like damage numbers are just not something that I pay any attention to on any particular fight. So I see that sort of average DPS for a boss fight or the total damage done on a fight, and that I can see go up when I get a nice upgrade.
Yeah, which makes sense. Like I don't in damaging things in Final Fantasy and in WoW in general, I just don't have that because I don't have like a log parser installed, and so I can't tell if I'm getting better. There's no indicator for me that I'm getting better other than sometimes things die faster, but I also can't really tell necessarily if things are dying faster or if I just got a lucky string of crits or if I hit my abilities in a slightly different order that time.
So for me, the only items that have ever really felt like that in WoW are trinkets and weapons. Like, trinkets can make a massive difference because the proc can be a massive difference, and weapons always have felt like this is a night and day difference between the last one I was using. Now I'm seeing that same effect every time I increase my weapon level, basically with the artifact system. So like every time I buy a new point, I'm noticing it feel a little stronger because every point spent into your artifact weapon essentially increases things on it. Like it just keeps getting better every time you spend a point up through. I'm not sure what the cap was on, like 36 points in or something like that. is when a lot of those stop scaling.
Well, then after that, you get a trait that increases everything.
Yeah. The big thing that I notice is, like, as a tank, individual gear pieces don't mean as much, but I noticed that over time, man, my survival is getting better. Largely because I'm not having to fight as hard to stay alive. And, I mean, that's a multi-scalar thing, too, because, like, one, as the healers get better gear, I also don't have to fight as hard. But I noticed the difference in playing a warrior, because a warrior is very much, I am self-shielding to stay alive. And the better gear I have, the less often I'm needing to even do that. Like, there's some encounters, like, prime example is Headless Horseman, which is actually way rougher this year than it's been in past years. I don't think I even need a healer on that fight. Like, just through using my abilities, I can keep myself topped off all times. And that wouldn't have been the case had I done that fight a couple months ago. So maybe it's not necessarily that any one item is just that better. It's just, I'm definitely feeling the cumulative effects of my gear. Because, like, now I am 861 as of tonight. I mean, is that the same sort of stuff you're experiencing, Grace? That just over time it feels like it's getting better?
Yeah, and I mean, I had the interesting comparison because I had leveled one healer and gotten some gear, put some points in her artifact, and then I leveled an entirely new identical healer on a different server and started over fresh from 110 and could just immediately feel the loss of that gear and those artifact points. And now I've seen it sort of equalize again, and it's definitely true that, like, I feel as I'm getting better geared and the tanks are getting better geared, that things become easier. And it's also pretty apparent pretty quickly, like running random heroics or whatever, that you can tell the tanks. Like, I don't have to look and inspect anyone to know like, which tanks are decently geared and which ones aren't. Like, I mean, it's always been that way.
And your re-leveling a healer was really interesting because, like, I was pretty adequately geared, and, like, it was a big difference that I noticed even between the two healers. Like, when you were on the new monk, like, at first, and you didn't have any gear, it was like, this was a risky proposition. Like, I was having to fight my ass off at times to stay alive. And then as you got gear, it was just like, nope, I don't even have to care anymore. Like, I want to do as much as I can to reduce the damage I'm taking, but really, I probably don't even need to hit reactives because you are healing that hard.
Yeah, and I mean, on my end, like, I mean, and part of it is because we wanted to be running the same content, right? Which, we were was starting to run mythics and things, and I jumped in on the new monk and tried to run things that maybe I shouldn't have been doing yet, even, in some of the heroics and stuff early on, and boy, I was mashing buttons as fast as I possibly could and running. I mean, mana was a huge issue, which sort of leveling together organically wasn't as much of a problem on the other monk because we were working our way through content that was maybe not pushing things as fast.
Well, and the other thing that complicated some of those runs was we like Ash and Thalen. We wanted to bring Ash and Thalen along.
And I was super under gear when you started doing that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
so was I.
Yeah, so basically, like, we would have had to have brought in a ringer to really make it a little smoother, because, like, as geared as I was, that's not going to let us kill things faster. Like, not by a significant margin. So, yeah, we were maybe doing it hard mode by having, 3 of the 5 people relatively undergeared. But we suffered through and, got people geared.
Next week we're going to try to do Karazhan, if we can get in the door.
If we can figure out where the key is. Maybe under the mat.
I think it's in the Arcatraz.
Probably back in Steam Vaults, right?
It would be horrible if we have to go to Arcatraz. Hey guys, remember that old attunement quest? You're gonna have to do it again.
See,
Well, wait
I
a
wouldn't
minute.
I wouldn't be as upset about that if they let me keep my key, but they didn't. It's gone.
Yeah.
Here's an idea.
Yeah.
So last time we had to go to Alcatraz, where Millhouse was imprisoned.
No, there's
I'm
no
okay.
way.
I'm okay with this because he's my minion now.
Well, yeah, but he had that key. What if his sister has the other key?
Man, I'm sure it's gonna somehow involve the Kirin Tor because they've basically been guarding it all this time.
I
Makes
hope
sense.
that there's at least a nod to the silliness of the old attunement.
So there are rings. Like there is a ring that increases from like 445 to 470 something, and eventually teleports you to Karazhan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know how you get it, but yeah, there's going to be a ring series.
But yeah, I'm sure we're going to log in once the patch is in, and Khadgar's head in a ball, or his poo elemental will run up to us and be like, "Hey, got a thing for you to do."
Okay, so the one thing that I've heard, and I am waiting for this because it's going to be amazing, is supposedly like this time when we go to Opera, it's a whole new group of plays.
It is
Yes.
an entirely new set of plays.
But supposedly all of the actors from the original set are just milling around backstage.
That's
pretty
awesome.
cool.
Amazing.
I just know one of them is West Side Story, so I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, that's pretty great. Wait a minute, that's just Romeo and Juliet again.
Is Karazhan one of those things that, like, if I were to resub, I could play with you guys?
We would have to get you geared.
We would have to drag you through like a couple of
We could do that.
mythics for some gear, but we could definitely do that.
We could probably get you geared pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because like Karazhan is one of the parts of WoW that I still do have fond memories of, and like
That was one of the very first things that happened the day I hit 70. Was Sam's Ray dragged me through Karazhan.
yeah, it was
Oh,
amazing.
hell yeah.
Yep. Look, I wasn't kidding when I said I have fond memories of Karazhan.
I ran that place every Sunday for at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years.
I
It
got
was
to,
the very first raid that I ever did.
I got to see a hyper noob healer and tank go from hyper noob.
Wasn't tank. Well, let me put it this way. You didn't bring me to tank.
I didn't bring you to tank, but you did some tanking.
I did the Trail Druids can emergency tank if your tanks die thing
Yep.
that I do sometimes.
Yep.
I'm glad that still works, by the way, if you take Guardian Affinity.
As a healer, I'm also glad that that still works.
I mean, I guess to be entirely fair, I got to watch a noob healer, a noob tank, and another person who became a not noob tank go from 0 to highly competent in like 3 pulls.
So yeah, Kara was my introduction to raiding, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, like I pretty much ran it every week until Zul'Aman came out, and then we switched over to Zul'Aman for the Sunday night thing. So the notion of us potentially doing this on Sunday is all the more nostalgic for me.
Yeah, Karazhan pulled me back from it was the first thing I did when I was really, really burned out from having Alinar evaporate. It's a much less acrimonious word, I was thinking.
But anyway, we have now been recording for a couple hours, so unless anyone else has anything they really want to talk about, we should probably wrap things up.
I think we're good.
Once again, we sat down without really thinking of anything to talk about, and we've, hammered out a show. So that's the way it works. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I would be curious to see any comments about anything we've talked about. Hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night!
See ya.
Good night.
Good night.